Thought Power, Chapter 6, Thought Waves and Forms. Investigators and students of the phenomena of thought power have long been aware that the particular thought vibrations emitted by the individual, as well as the combined thought vibrations of a number of individuals, travel through space in the same general form as that assumed by magnetic force or electrical energy. That is to say, there exist thought waves, thought currents, and thought forms, i.e., massed thought vibrations, which have assumed a certain form and acquired a certain density, which are composed of thought vibrations emitted by the individual or individuals. These thought waves, thought currents, and thought forms are known to exist, even though they are not visible to the normal vision. They are recognized as present and active by reason of the perception of their effects and results. From such observation, much also has been learned concerning their activities and general character. In short, they are known by their works, just as are the waves, currents, and general forms of electrical or magnetic energy, including those phases involved in wireless transmission. It is not always necessary actually to see a thing in order to know that it exists and is active. Nature's strongest forces are often the finest and most subtle, imperceptible to the normal sight, though usually capable of being registered by instruments and apparatus and of being recognized through their effects and induced results. You never actually saw electricity nor magnetism, yet you do not doubt their existence nor their power, for you have experienced the results and effects of their activity. The existence of thought waves, thought currents, and thought forms is recognized and accepted in the same way. But from an entirely different source, there comes a great mass of evidence tending to corroborate and support the scientific discoveries and hypotheses concerning the above stated manifestations of thought power. We allude to the great body of teaching generally known as occult, particularly that form of such teachings which have long existed among the Oriental races. We may also say that similar evidence is furnished by certain investigators of psychical research phenomena, the reports of whom agree with those of the Oriental occultists, and like the latter are found to indicate the existence of certain laws or principles of activity which independent investigation has discovered to govern the phenomena of thought power along the lines which we are now considering. In short, both the ancient and modern occultists and the psychic researchers hold that in certain exceptional cases, by means of the ordinary faculty of sight developed to a supernormal degree, or else by means of an astral or psychic faculty of vision, the thought atmospheres, the thought vibrations, the thought waves, and thought currents of the individual may be sensed and perceived by the person possessing the supernormal or psychic or astral vision. The occult teachings furnish an extended series of reports of observations of the phenomena of thought power made in this way. Now, while in this book we have no intention of urging the adoption of these occult or psychic reports, nor are we conducting propaganda work concerning such teachings or doctrines. Nevertheless, we feel that in view of the fact that the ordinary observations of thought waves, thought currents, and thought forms show that these act as if these occult or psychic reports were true, as if such laws and principles of action were operative in the phenomena mentioned. We are called upon to direct your attention to the same in this book. Whether you either accept or reject these reports, we feel that in view of the fact that these thought phenomena act as if such laws and principles are operative, you will find it convenient and interesting to employ them as at least symbolic or poetical illustrations of the workings of thought power in the case of the phenomenon in question. We offer them, therefore, with this understanding between us. That is, that you will accept them either as literally correct or else as merely symbolic or poetical illustrations of certain real activities, or that, suspending judgment in the case, you will maintain an open mind concerning them. In any event, the examination of the reports will prove interesting and instructive. Thought colors. In the first place, the occult teachings inform us that each general class of emotional or thought states has its own color, tint, or hue, which is perceived in thought atmospheres, thought waves, thought currents, or thought forms. Thus, blue indicates religious or spiritual emotions or thoughts, the lighter tints indicating the higher forms of spirituality. Yellow indicates feelings and thoughts of an intellectual nature, the lighter tints making the highest phases of these mental stages. Orange indicates intellectual ambition or pride. Brown indicates greed, avarice. Red indicates the elemental or animal passions and the thoughts arising from them, particularly those concerned with anger, strife, and sensuality. Crimson indicates the higher forms of affection or love, the very highest phases being marked by a beautiful rose color. Green indicates deceit, trickery, slyness, its clear tints, denoting diplomacy, tact, politeness, suavity, while a dirty, dull shade indicates envy, jealousy, and disloyalty. Gray indicates gloom and depression, certain shades denoting forms of selfishness, while a pallid tint denotes fear. Black indicates hate, revenge, malice, destructiveness, and its presence serves to darken the shades of the other colors with which it is often blended. White indicates spirituality in its highest forms and phases, or perhaps something higher than that to which we usually apply that term. And its presence serves to lighten the tints of the other colors with which it is often blended. There is an almost infinite possibility of blending, combination, shading, tinting, and arrangement of these colors, but the above will serve to indicate the general report and teaching on the subject. Thought auras. The occult teachings inform us that each and every person has his or her aura, or egg-shaped thought atmosphere surrounding the body and extending some 3 feet or more from it, gradually shading into faintness at its extreme limits. This aura, we are informed, differs in color according to the characteristic thoughts and emotional states of the person, an above stated scale of colors determining the shade, hue, or blending. The thought substance of a person consists of this aura together with its more distant and extended radiations, all, however, being colored according to its general character. The thought atmosphere of places. The thought atmospheres of churches, business establishments, homes, offices, prisons, hospitals, and similar places are held by the occultists to be colored according to the general character of the thoughts and mental states of those who inhabit them, or who have previously given them their mental color. Churches are said to be very materially in their blue coloring, some being of a beautiful clear light blue, while others manifest an ugly dark purplish blue. Theaters are said also to vary greatly in color, tints, shades, and hues. Business houses and offices are colored according to their nature. Prisons have a depressing and repulsive coloring. Houses of ill repute have an ugly, low, repulsive shading and coloring so dense that it seems that it must be seen by the normal vision. And so on, each place having its appropriate coloring, its thought atmosphere, usually extending for some little distance around it, forming something like an aura. In some cases, the thought atmosphere extending quite a distance from the place and tending to color the whole neighborhood. Thought waves and thought currents. The occult teachings also inform us that there are waves, great and small, composed of thought vibrations of individuals, which often travel great distances from their source. Great currents or streams of thought vibrations also flow in all directions through space, often reaching points very far distant from their starting places. These waves, currents, or streams of thought vibrations all are colored and tinted according to the nature and character of the mental states represented by their vibrations. Some of them seem like rapidly moving streams with well-defined boundaries and of great comparative consistency and firmness. Others resemble great clouds of mist or fog, illuminated by their coloring, of course, loosely organized and of but slight consistency, which drift slowly along, changing shape and apparently lacking in definite direction, acting in every way like their physical counterparts just mentioned. Some of these clouds are light and fleecy, while others are murky, dark, and ugly, like great bodies of dark smoke. Thought whirlpools and swirl pools. The occult teachings also inform us that there are great whirlpools often set up in these mental currents or streams, which eventually gain terrific power and which extend their influences over great areas of space. These whirling vortices of thought vibrations are of two general classes, which for the purpose of distinction may be called whirlpools and swirl pools, respectively. The whirlpool maintains a rotary movement toward a common center, ever drawing to that center the material which is affected by it. The swirl pool also maintains a rotary movement, but away from the common center, ever widening its circumference and ever seeking to spread its influence over a larger area. The whirlpool acts to draw to its central point all things over which it is able to exert its influence. The swirl pool acts to spread its circle of influence and to disseminate its contagious influence. These whirlpools and swirl pools of thought vibrations affect and influence only those in whom they can set up similar vibrations by means of inductive action, as we have explained to you. Those immune to these vibrations are not influenced by the drawing or driving power. The general principles of thought attraction, which we have described to you, apply in these cases as well as in the case of every form or phase of the influence of thought power. You should also remember that these whirlpools and swirlpools are not necessarily evil or disadvantageous. On the contrary, they are often composed of the very best kind of thought vibrations, representing the most desirable mental states. All great movements, religious, moral, political, educational, set up being and activity great whirlpools and swirlpools, such as we have just described. On the other hand, the contagion of mental epidemics or crazes, popular excitement, partisanship, or crowd psychology in general, is most often transmitted in just this form. These whirlpools and swirlpools likewise exist in much smaller form and exert a comparatively small influence. Every individual or group of individuals seeking to draw other persons to a certain central point or purpose unconsciously sets into operation one of the smaller whirlpools. Likewise, an individual or a group of individuals seeking to spread some doctrine, teaching, theory, belief, or state of opinion unconsciously sets into operation one of these smaller swirlpools. The same general principles and laws govern large and small alike. If you understand the general principle, you understand the workings of all the phenomena governed by that principle. Thought forms. The occult teachings also inform us that in addition to their manifestation as thought waves, thought streams, and thought currents, the thought vibrations of the individual sometimes assume the condition known to us as thought forms, of which there are many varieties and kinds. These thought forms are really detached portions of the aura of the individual, which are thrown off by him by the intensity of his thought or by the excitement of his emotions, or in some few cases by the deliberate will of the person who has acquired an understanding of the occult methods. The aura does not always maintain its definite outlines and its essential integrity of substance. Instead, on certain occasions, it is set into what may be called a violent storm, in which whirlpools and swirlpools are manifested, and during which portions of the auric substance are thrown off into space, sometimes traveling long distances. The following statement by a writer upon occult subjects will serve to picture this condition. The writer says, "The human aura is not always in a state of calm phosphorescence, however. On the contrary, it sometimes manifests great flames like those of a fiery furnace, which shoot forth in great tongues and dart forth suddenly in certain directions toward the objects attracting them. Under great emotional excitement, the auric flame moves around in swift circling whirlpools or else swirls away from a center. Again, it seems to throw forth tiny glistening sparks of astral vibrations, some of which travel for great distances. The occultists inform us that thought forms are specialized groupings of astral substance, crystallized by the strong thought impulses or vibrations of the person thinking or manifesting strong emotional excitement. They are generated in the aura of the person in the first place, but are then thrown off or emitted from the atmosphere of the individual and are sent off into space. A thought form is really but a strongly manifested thought or feeling which has taken form in the astral substance. Its power and duration depend upon the degree of force of the thought or feeling manifesting it. The occult writer whom we have just quoted gives us the following information concerning the appearance and action of the thought forms so generated and set forth from the aura. These thought forms differ very materially from one another in form and general appearance. The most common form is that of tiny series of waves, similar to those caused by the dropping of a pebble in a pond of water. Sometimes the thought form takes on the appearance of a whirlpool, rotating around a center and moving through space as well. Another form is like that of the pinwheel fireworks, swirling away from its center as it moves through space. Still another form is that of a whirling ring, like that emitted from a smokestack of a locomotive or the mouth of a smoker, that familiar ring of the smoker. Others have the form and appearance of semi-luminous globes, glowing like a giant opal. Other thought forms are emitted in jet-like streams, like steam puffed out from a tea kettle. Again, one will appear as a series of short puffs of steam-like appearance. Again, one will twist along like an eel or a snake. Another will twist its way like a corkscrew. At other times, a thought form will appear as a bomb or a series of bombs projected from the aura of the thinker. Sometimes, in the case of a vigorous thinker or speaker, these thought form bombs will be seen to explode when they reach the aura of the person addressed or thought of. Other forms appear like nebulous things resembling an octopus whose twining tentacles twist around the person to whom they are directed. Each thought form bears the same color that it possessed when generated in the aura of the person creating it, though the colors seem to fade in time. Many of them glow with a dull phosphorescence instead of bright coloring. The atmosphere of every person in every place is filled with various thought forms, emanated from the person or persons who inhabit the place. Each building has its own distinctive thought forms, which permeate its mental atmosphere and which are clearly discernible by trained psychic vision. The same occultist, in a description of a journey in the astral, addresses the following words to the person who is supposed to be sensing on the astral plane. We reproduce his words merely because they create an interesting picture of what the occultist claim may be perceived by supernormal psychic vision, not with the intention of supporting the statements contained therein, nor of claiming them to represent actual facts. The occultist says, "Notice that beautiful spiritual blue around that woman's head, and see that ugly, muddy red around that man passing her. Here comes an intellectual giant. See that beautiful golden yellow around his head, like a nimbus. But I don't exactly like that shade of red about his body, and there is too marked an absence of blue in his aura. He lacks harmonious development. Do you notice those great clouds of semi-luminous substance which are now slowly floating along? Notice how the colors vary in them. Those are clouds of thought vibrations representing the composite thought of a multitude of people. Also notice how each body of thought is drawing to itself little fragments of similar thought forms and energy. You see here the tendency of thought forms to attract others of their kind. How like the proverbial birds of a feather they flock together. How thoughts come home, bringing their friends with them. How each man creates his own thought atmosphere. Speaking of atmosphere, do you notice that each shop we pass has its own peculiar thought atmosphere? If you look into the houses on either side of the street, you will see that the same thing is true of them. The very street itself has its own atmosphere created by the composite thought of those inhabiting and frequenting it. No, do not pass down that side street. Its astral atmosphere is too depressing and its colors too horrible and disgusting for you to witness just now. You might get discouraged and fly back to your normal plane for relief. Look at those thought forms flying through the thought atmosphere. What a variety of form and coloring. Some most beautiful, the majority quite neutral intent, and occasionally a fierce, fiery one tearing its way toward its mark. Observe those whirling and swirling thought forms as they are thrown off from that business house. Across the street, notice the great octopus monster of the thought form, with its great tentacles striving to wind around persons and to draw them into that flashy dance hall and dram shop, a devilish monster which we would do well to destroy. Turn your concentrated thought upon it and will it out of existence. There, that's the right way. Watch it sicken and shrivel. But alas, more of its kind will come forth from that place. By reference to the above stated teachings of the occultists, ancient and modern, you will see that the occult teachers agree almost, if not indeed wholly, with the hypothesis of the modern investigators of the phenomena of thought power. The occultists, however, claim to have obtained their information by means of psychic or astral vision, in which they have actually perceived what they describe, while the modern investigators, on the contrary, make no such claims of actual sensing, but have built their hypothesis entirely from actual observations and experiments concerning the results and effects of the forces in question. So far, it should be noted, the modern investigators have practically corroborated the statements of the ancient occultists. This certainly so far as is concerned the actual operation of these forces in the form of thought atmospheres, thought contagion, thought waves, thought currents, thought streams, and thought forms. The modern investigators, however, have advanced no positive statements concerning the colors or astral tints which the occultists emphatically assert to exist and to be perceptible to supernormal or psychic vision. It is much, however, as the physical colors which we perceive by ordinary vision are held by scientists to be entirely due to particular rates of vibration of light waves. It is not unreasonable to suppose that thought vibrations of different and higher rates might cause the appearance of color, tints, hues, and shades to a vision capable of perceiving or registering them. This, however, is apart from the general subject of this book and is here referred to merely because of its general interest. Of more practical importance to us is the discovery that the occultists agree with the modern investigators in the fact that thought contagion and thought induction depend quite materially upon one, similarity of thought states between the external thought vibrations and those of the person influenced, and two, the degree of fear thought or confident expectation of any kind on the part of the person influenced. Moreover, both classes of teachers and investigators hold that positive, desirable thought states are more powerful in their influence than are the negative, undesirable ones, and serve to neutralize or even to dissolve the latter. A fact which lies at the bottom of all systems or methods of treating thought, atmospheres, or conditions on the part of mental scientists and others of similar schools. Remember always that sunlight always drives away darkness. The most effective way of dispelling darkness is to turn on the light. By keeping your own mental keynote properly pitched, you not only are immune to the thought vibrations of the lower order, but also are able to neutralize or to dissolve these by the power of your own thought. Surely a comforting and satisfying fact, is it not?